Okay, we are live on another edition of the Edlow Podcast. Subscribe. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast, Amazon Podcast, Super Intergalactic, Awesome Monster Podcast. It's not really a thing. I just made that up. You can find us anywhere that there are podcasts streaming. And I say us as if there's somebody else in the room with me. There's not. It's just me. It's just me today. It's just me always. I'm the one. I am the Edlow Podcast. So welcome. There's a lot of you that are new, and welcome you. Shout out to Vietnam. Apparently, not quite sure why, but Vietnam down 20% of my downloads on Apple Podcast and Spotify has come from Vietnam. So welcome. Glad to have you, Vietnamese folk. Anyhow, this is a Just Me podcast. This is one of my favorite ones to do, and not just because I don't have to schedule another guest. I like this one because this is an opportunity for listeners to ask me any type of question that they want on anything. Often the questions come in about religion, the Sacramento Kings, wrestling, uh, relationships for some reason, and all sorts of different topics, things about me, things about life. And I got to tell you, of all the just me's, also while we're talking about this, the way that you can send me a message for a Just Me podcast is by joining one of our social media. Again, I said our as if there's somebody else here. My social media, the Edlow Podcast social media on Facebook. You can find us at Edlow Podcast, Instagram at Edlow Podcast, and on TikTok at actually, I think that's at J Edlow. I also just started an X account, Twitter account for the Edlow podcast. Gonna try to add a fourth one. Why not? It's not like all my extra time. I could do a fourth one, I suppose. And so we are going to do a fourth social media platform. So you can try to follow us over there on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. But you can send me a direct message or comment on the Just Be post when I post it. I usually post about 24 to 48 hours before saying, hey, I'm going to record. Ask me any questions that you want. And I got to tell you, this time I got more. I don't know if I got more questions. I did get more, I feel like more deep questions, like long messages. Um, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you trusting in me. I don't know how helpful I am, but I'm going to try with these questions that are pretty significant to the person's life. Everything I talk about is anonymous. So if you send me something, you don't have to worry about me telling people who you are. And for those of you who are still not comfortable with that, I do have an anonymous app. I often post on like the store on my stories, the link to the anonymous question app that you could do. So that way I won't even know who you are if it's that deep. So that's the criteria for today. Why don't we just go right into it? Um, so here's one of the deeper questions. We'll start here. It says, Josh, I've been struggling with something and I'd really value your take. I believe in God and I want to have faith, but I keep getting turned off by what feels like hypocrisy in religion. People preaching love, humility, and grace, but then acting judgmental, prideful, or even cruel. It makes it hard for me to separate the message from the people. How do you personally reconcile that? That's a great question, and I would say the reason, or the way I reconcile that is understanding that Christian morality is aspirational and unattainable. So if you think about the edict, the system that Jesus put in place, he says, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect." Now, I don't know about you, but I know that it is quite impossible for me to be perfect. I've already messed up enough. The whole purpose of Christianity is that we are all going to fall short of the glory of God, and we need a savior to come and rectify those things for us. That is what the atonement is all about. It's about us making mistakes and being able to be forgiven for them. So, in that way, everybody is a hypocrite. in that we all attest or aspire to this perfect belief. We all preach and say we value the commandments or we value this moral system. But then we all have our favorite secret little sin that we are struggling with. And so, yeah, I accept that everybody who comes to church is imperfect and everybody is a hypocrite, and that's why we're there. So, I don't know if that's helpful for you. I can certainly understand if you're talking about some people who maybe are like a pastor of a mega church, or maybe you hear about a bishop or a leader who is preaching one thing, but then you find out on the other side that they're doing something pretty horrendous, and that's pretty shocking to the system and to the conscience when that happens. But understand, if we believe the scriptures as they are, if we and I'm of the LDS variety, so as we learn the Doctrine and Covenants, God does not look upon sin with the least degree of allowance. So even though, yes, there are some people's sins who become very public, um, all of us are hypocrites. On that same note, I think another thing that I would find really important to say is often, and I'm not thinking of anybody in particular, but often something happens to somebody, maybe they're a celebrity, maybe they're somebody of notoriety, or maybe they're somebody who's just well known in the community, and they do something that is outside of their character, and they get blown up by it, and word spreads around. Maybe he gets, excuse me, he or she gets excuse me, getting over this cold that my little incubators of disease known as children gave me, and it's been going on for about a month. I haven't had a fever in a long time, but this cough is just lingering. Anyhow, back to what I was saying. What was I saying? Oh, yes. So sometimes somebody, maybe of influence or whatever, they do something wrong and it becomes very public. And there's a natural tendency of a mob mentality to kind of pile on that person. And maybe they deserve it, maybe they don't. Well, one thing I remember thinking about a long time ago when a friend of mine had a situation like that is I thought to myself as I was thinking about all the people who were kind of abandoning him in a bad, he'd done some pretty significant things. It was to say, all I know is if the worst thing, the most embarrassing thing I ever did was put out there for the entire public to see, I would hope that people would show me mercy. And so, to the best of my ability, I try to give that mercy um, to what you might perceive to be the hypocrite. That doesn't mean you condone their behavior, doesn't mean that you condone what they're doing, but sometimes that is key. Okay, thanks for the question. So I got one message that just said, "How about them Kings?" So for those of you who are new, I am from Sacramento. I'm a Sacramento Kings fan, season ticket holder. I take my children with me and various friends and loved ones to games at times, and so this year has been particularly rough. I think the reason that I mean, the Kings have always sucked. I mean, let's be real. Okay. They've been here for 41 years now. And there's been maybe 3 or 4 years where I had any hope of them being any good. And so them sucking pretty bad is not new. Um, um, but I think the reason this one stings so much is because it was only a few years ago where the Kings gave us just a glimmer of hope. So, for those of you who are not following the Sacramento Kings, in 2022, out of nowhere, after a trade for Tyrese Halliburton for Domantas Sabonis came to Sacramento at the trade deadline of I think it was the 21 season, and then the 2022 season. There were some other trades that happened. We signed Malik Monk. We traded for Kevin Herter. We had a pretty dynamic, exciting, offensively explosive team. We drafted Keegan Murray, who had a stellar rookie year, and just really did well. Plus, also the West was kind of just beat up with injuries, and the Kings ended up actually being the 3 seed in the playoffs and playing the Warriors in the first round. And the Warriors, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, historically, had just won a championship the year before. And so we were playing them in the first round. And of course, they're right up the road from us an hour and a half. So that kind of built a rivalry. And just we took them to 7 games, lost in game 7, thanks to Steph Curry putting up 50 points. I was there. It was both amazing and terrible if you're a Kings fan. And then, man, just walking away from that season, we just had so much hope. And then just out of nowhere, it just got terrible. I mean, terrible and terrible fast. And so next thing you know, we're vying for a playing spot and we're losing the plan. And then we get in the playing spot again, but we're a lower seed and we don't make it again. And then this last year, man, it was just horrific. I mean, just not even, I mean, the worst record I've seen in a long time. And it just really, it was just really hard. Maybe it was because, you know, I'm at every game, but it was rough basketball to watch. But there were some bright spots. I think we have a really good young core. 3 rookies, Maxine Raynaud, Nick Clifford, and Dylan Cardwell. We brought up Precious Achua, who just really had a breakout year. A couple of the guys that came in on two-way deals like Killian Hayes, and Plowden, I can't remember his first name, but they came in and they looked okay. But those three rookies, they really developed over time. And I don't know, who knows what's gonna end up happening. I certainly don't. For all I know, they could be like Keegan Murray had just a really good rookie year and then really hasn't progressed that strongly since, and that could happen. But, a couple of these guys, you look at them, you go, maybe these guys actually are gonna be something good, and we have a good draft pick, a top 10, hopefully a top 3. We're hoping at least a top 5. It's a deep draft. Hopefully, if we pick up another real good player and maybe make a few moves and get rid out of some of these terrible contracts like Zach Levine's contract, which I still to this day have no idea why we ever took on. Maybe the Kings pull it out. And so I would say that even though this was a terrible season, I am optimistic that finally, with our new GM Scott Perry, who came from New York, who helped build the Knicks into the playoff team that they are now, hopefully he can come in here and actually make the changes necessary to give us a sustainable perennial playoff team. But I don't know. I mean, feel like I've been saying that my whole life, "Oh, we got a good core. Maybe a year or 2 from now, things will be good." And then it just never is. And so, man, being a Kings fan is the most traumatic relationship I've ever been in, and that says a lot. So, anyhow, thanks for the question. What do you like most and the least about your height? Okay, so I am 6'7", and I think I like the fact that I stand out in a crowd and that I can be seen for my children's sake. So if we're in a public place and they kind of wander off, it's not hard for them to find me. So there's a level of security as a parent of that, and also for my kids. I also like that when I go to events like concerts, kind of sucks for the people behind me, but no matter where I am, I can always see. That's pretty helpful. Um, and my lady can wear whatever size heels she wants, right? That's good too. Uh, Things that are hard, um, I'd say like the hardest things are cars and airplanes are hard. Um, the world just isn't really built for a guy like me. And not only that, clothes are hard. Um, because little known fact, when you get into the bigger sizes, especially like for example, big and tall, the big and tall stores, they create clothes as if it's like you're either tall and skinny or short and fat. So if you're just well proportioned, which I am, like I'm 6'7", but I'm not skinny. I'm not fat, but I'm not skinny. I go to the gym. I'm pretty well built, always have been. Um, I there's just not a lot of options for my size. I'm kind of like at the upper echelon of what you can get in a normal store, and I'm on the lower end of what you can do in a big and tall store. So there's just not a lot of options. Shoes are the same way. So I'm a 14 or 15, depending on the size of the shoe or the fit of the shoe. So I just have to go into shoe stores if I want to try it on first and say, um, what do you have in a 14? And then I get a couple of options, maybe 3 if I'm lucky, and I pick that. Online shopping is a little bit easier. The thing is, though, is online shopping, like, you just don't know how it's gonna fit, especially as you get to the bigger sizes, so, yeah. One thing that used to really bother me is that when you're the tallest guy in the room, everybody seems to kinda gravitate towards you. They all kinda wanna talk to you, especially other tall people. It's almost like a club. I don't know. I don't do that, I don't feel, but other tall people do. Um, so I used to kinda get annoyed by that, but, you know, I just kinda got over it and just said, "Oh, poor baby, people wanna talk to you and wanna be nice to you, like, it can't be that bad," and it's not. Um, so, yeah, I've kinda gotten over that and enjoy meeting new people. So, yeah, that's a good question. What's something you learned from your dad? Okay, so my dad, I think I learned he was always a hard worker. I've been pretty open about my childhood and, he had a lot of demons that he worked through, and he worked through them. But the younger years were tough a lot of the time. We butted heads a lot. Just that, sometimes the consistency wasn't there emotionally and, anyway. So, but he always worked really hard, and I'll tell one story. So, I think I was in 7th or 8th grade, I'm not quite sure. I was playing basketball, and for whatever reason, this game I didn't get the start, and I usually did. So, that really stuck in my craw, this game, and, my coach was just like a high school basketball player, from I don't know what school, but, it wasn't like when I went to high school and I had real coaches. And so, anyway, uh, so it came to the end of the game, and, he was gonna throw me in there for some garbage minutes, and I was offended, and so I didn't wanna go in. And, my dad saw that, and he came over to the coach. He said, "Coach, I wanna apologize to you, that'll never happen again." And man, when I get in the car, he just reams me a new one about that. And, he told me this story, and he started talking about Kevin McHale when he was on I think it was the 1986 championship Boston Celtics. And he was telling me, he goes, he's one of the best players of all time, Hall of Famer, and he came off the bench. But you know what? Even though he didn't start the game, at the end of the game was on the line, those last few valuable minutes, he was always on the floor. And I was like, "What's your point, Dad?" And his point was, it doesn't really necessarily matter who starts the game. It's about who finishes the game that matters. And that really stuck with me when it came time to finishing what I started. Um, uh, I think that's where a lot of people lose is that they're not willing to stick with it. And, if things don't go their way, um, they don't stay ready. And so those are a couple good ones I learned from my dad. What's something you learned from your mom? Boy, my mom really did teach me what my capacity was. It was not pretty all the time. She really pushed me hard, sometimes more than I wanted to be pushed, and that created a lot of tension. But she ultimately, I know, even though some of it was not well received and on the verge of traumatic, she pushed me to my capacity and showed me what I was capable of, and that's something that carried with me for a long time. And so, and she's also a great example of service to others. She serves others all the time. So, okay. What's something you hope your kids learn from you? I hope that my kids learn to believe in themselves so much that they believe in themselves more than I believe in them. And I believe they all have capacity to do great things, and once they figure it out, man, they're gonna take on the world. I know that's true, and they're all on varying levels of that journey. I don't know if any of them have really figured it out yet. Self-doubt is a pretty serious thing that only comes by conquering hard things, and, slowly over time, they are. Austin's on a mission right now, and he's just doing great, and Piper's doing great in school. They're all conquering things every day, so really proud of them. What's some of the worst advice you've ever received? So I'm gonna keep that one to myself. That is an inside joke, and, so but yeah, it's funny. It's funny, but I'm gonna keep it to myself. We'll just leave it at that. What's some of the best advice you've ever received? I've found some good advice over the years. I think the one that comes to mind, excuse me. Okay, so what's some of the best advice I've ever received? A friend of mine named Dark Sheik, she is a trans Muslim pro wrestler, and she said something very profound. I was sharing with her how I didn't necessarily feel like I fit in anywhere. I didn't feel like I really fit in the kind of quote unquote, and I'm using quotes, Mormon crowd. For those of you on listening in your car or on Apple, using air quotes when I say that, the Mormon crowd. I didn't really fit in with like people who weren't members of the church because I kind of kept all the Mormon standards, but then I was also a little rough around the edges. I liked like fight sports and hard rock music. I would get in fights and I would, be a little bit of a rabble rouser and had a lot of fun. And some of my leaders didn't like that so much. So I just felt like I didn't really fit in anywhere. And that kind of carried through. Um, even now, sometimes it's getting better now. I think there's enough of us now, and I think I've realized enough now that nobody fits in anywhere. But she said to me, she said, if you don't fit in the box, create your own, and maybe then others can fit in yours. And that really was a profound. I hope she knows how profound that was for me because um, that allowed me to feel a little more comfortable in my own skin and being okay with not fitting in. So I appreciate that quite a bit. Okay. If you could create a TV show, what would it be? Oh, strap in. Okay. I've been waiting for this question. All right. So I have shared how much I love trashy reality TV. It is my not so secret uh, guilty pleasure when it comes to TV. So I love shows like Married at First Sight and 90 Day Fiance and Love is Blind. Recently started watching The Age of Attraction. Terrible show. Don't know why I'm watching it. Gonna finish it. They got a season two. You should probably check it out, but don't. It's not that great. Anyway, so I have been thinking about this and I'm like, oh man, what if, what if they did a an LDS single adult married at first sight? Oh my goodness. So for those of you who don't know Married at First Sight, let me give you the synopsis. Okay. So we have experts. Back to those air quotes, all you people on audio land, experts who come in and they interview all these people and they figure out what their core values are and then they match people on those core values and they don't see each other until they get to the altar and they marry each other at first sight. And when I say core values, sometimes I question what those core values are. Sometimes it's like, hey, I have a cat, and hey, you have a cat. Oh, we have so much in common. So yeah, that's what it feels like sometimes when we watch the show. Now, to be honest, I watch these shows strictly so I can get to the tell all and watch the madnesses too. However, I would love to see this show. Could you imagine experts matching these people on core values, meeting at first sight, and then what the absolute train wreck that would happen? It would be amazing. First of all, everyone would have sex on the first night, right? I mean, law chassis doesn't apply anymore. Doesn't even matter if you're attracted to him. You're ready to go. You just do it. So that's the first thing that happens, complicating everything. Then you got to figure out things like, hey, do you drink caffeinated soft drinks? I don't know. Hey, what do you think about sports on Sunday? Do we swim on Sunday? I don't know. Do we? I don't know. And the big fight with that. And oh, hey, are you listening to me? Oh, I don't really know. Oh, hey, I'm the priesthood holder. Oh, you're supposed to be submissive to me. Can you imagine having the submissiveness conversation on TV and listening to how crazy the men would sound? It would be fantastic. And then the best part is they would all stay together anyway. And they'd go until it was so toxic that they were insane and people were doing all sorts of crazy things. It would be amazing. Anybody else agree? No? Yes? Write in the comments and tell me what you think. Okay, I got another one. Hear me out. So Love is Blind. Okay, Love is Blind. I've come late to Love is Blind. I've started watching it. I didn't watch the first few seasons, but I've been watching it lately. Let me tell you, I would never go on that show. However, um, the thing is that I find it quite ridiculous to think that Love is Blind when everyone who goes on that show is attractive, except for the girl who claims she looked like Megan Fox and looked nothing like Megan Fox. Looked like she ate Megan Fox. Anyway, the point is that almost everybody who goes on there is just drop dead gorgeous. That's not Love is Blind. So I propose we combine Love is Blind with the old 80s game show Press Your Luck. Now, for you youngins who've been listening to this show for the first time, let me explain Press Your Luck. Press Your Luck was a 1980s game show where people would go on, they'd ask questions, and they'd get spins of the wheel. And the wheel would go around, and they'd have to hit a stopper. And when they hit the stopper, they would get whatever prize it landed on. And they all had a certain number of spins, and at the end of the game, whoever had the most value won. So whoever got all the prizes and those prizes carried the most value, they won the whole game. And then they got to go on to the grand prize show. However, every once in a while, when you hit the stopper, you land on a whammy. A whammy was like this red little troll, goofy looking thing that would show up. And when it showed up, it ate all your prizes and you went back to zero. So I am proposing that the creators of Love is Blind put at least one or two whammies on both sides. You know what I'm talking about. Like a real uggo. Somebody who's just like, ooh, been in a knife fight, like really, someone who just very attractive voice, but definitely is not in the what we'd say the upper echelon of the attractiveness scale physically. And then, my friends, then we would see if love is truly blind, right? What do you think? Hit me up in the comments. I think it's a genius idea. If ever there was a reel that went viral, that would be the one I'd want. Okay, now, hope I answered that question. All right, now on to a serious one. Actually, that was a serious one. I'm dead serious about the Love is Blind whammy idea. Anyway, okay. So, uh, last time I did a Just Me, I did someone had sent me a TikTok reel or something like that of this uh, ex-Mormon influencer, if you would, named Faith Unraveled. And she was saying something on a podcast about how in order to be a good member of the church or to be a good person, you're not allowed to do adult things like, watch R-rated movies or cuss or go to bars or dress immodestly and all these things. And I took issue with the framing of what went on. And so it went, I put it out there and actually she reached out to me. We exchanged a few messages, came to a fair conclusion. I understood where she was coming from and she understood where I was coming from. At least I felt that way. Um, and let me just say, I think she's a good person who obviously went through a very real struggle with her faith. Um, Even if I don't necessarily agree with all of her choices, I do understand that's a struggle that we've all probably had, and I don't fault her at all for any of the choices that she made in deciding to leave the church. I just had an issue with the framing of what she said. Now, somebody sent me another thing from Faith Unraveled, and I can't really play it or figure out the video or how to put it on here. It's not my video. It's probably not my place to do that. But she put a video up of herself watching Coachella in her living room, dancing around her living room, and she was watching Nine Inch Nails set. And when she saw the set, she put something on one of her reels or whatever that said, um, just a girl who, gave up Nine Inch Nails to be able to go to the temple only to find them in my late 40s while watching Coachella or something like that. And when I first saw that, I have to tell you, um, uh, I had some feelings about it. And I wanna say what I'm about to say is actually not a comment on what she did, but more on a comment on my own feelings about it. Because I kinda oscillated between, annoyance and empathy, and let me explain. So when I first saw that, when I first saw the thing that they sent me that said, "Oh, I had to give up Nine Inch Nails to go to the temple," my first thought on the one hand was, "Wow, that's funny." I've held the temple recommend since I was 12, 13 years old, been to dozens, if not 100 temple recommend interviews, and I have never once been asked, "Do you listen to Nine Inch Nails?" in a temple recommend interview. I've never had any question on my music choices at all in a temple recommend interview. So there is no doctrine against Nine Inch Nails or any other type of music for that matter. That's true. And quite frankly, let me say, I'm a big fan of Nine Inch Nails myself. I discovered them, while watching their set on Woodstock '94 when it had rained and they all got in the mud and got all muddy and then did their performance. It was iconic. I loved it. I went out and I bought Pretty Hate Machine, the album, and loved it. Um, just really loved the album and followed them for a while. Not the hugest fan now, but I was pretty big into them in the '90s. So, a fan myself. Now, Um, on the other hand, after I got that annoyance, I also recognize that there's a church culture element that maybe I never really bought into when it came to my music choices or my content, that I watched. Um, but there is an element in the church that I think we don't talk enough about, of things that are taught that are not necessarily doctrinal, but are taught that are opinions taught by members or local leaders or even general authorities, um, that are taught as if they are doctrine. So I recognize that even though there's never been any sort of doctrinal teaching that said you can't listen to Nine Inch Nails, I recognize that this woman may have very much had leaders during her time that made her feel like her love of Nine Inch Nails was inappropriate and that she needed to give that up to be clean to go to the temple. And in my opinion, that's wrong. And I'm sorry that someone taught their personal opinion in such a way that it made her feel like she couldn't be herself on something that was not doctrinal. That to me is the very definition of false doctrine, and I think it's a real problem in the church. And so, um, since people are talking about their opinions, let me just throw this out. George Q. Cannon once said, "When a bishop gives a man a recommend, it is as though he recommends him for the celestial kingdom." Now, I have kind of gone back and forth on what I thought was appropriate and what I thought wasn't appropriate with regard to things that maybe were taught, that were recommendations or policies. And I think where I've landed, and I think what's most important is this, and that is that if you can answer every question on a temple recommend interview truthfully and obtain a recommend, then you're doing great. You're doing exemplary. And everything else that we're taught is just a suggestion. And it's a decision that you need to make between you and God through prayer to decide. I had another experience, I'll share it here. There's a woman I know, she's married, has a few kids. She's a great wife, great mom, great person. She's out there working in communities and in schools and doing a great job there, giving of her time, giving community service. She was an old ward of mine. One day she came into church and she had her earlobe pierced, and then she had, I don't know what you call it, but it's like the little piece of your ear that's kind of like covering your ear, your ear canal a little bit. She had that pierced, and I'd never seen that before. And so I just went up to her and I went, "Oh, what was like why pierce there?" Like I just didn't understand. And she looked at me and she goes, "Oh, yeah, I have migraines." And studies have shown that doing that in migraines. So I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for the migraines. But, I told the bishop, I was like, I put it in there because of migraines. I want him to know that it's not that I'm not following. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. Like she was so worried that people were gonna judge her because she had a second earring, because in the 1990s, Gordon B. Hinckley recommended that men not wear earrings and women only wear 1 pair of earrings, and now we're acting as if though that is somehow a bastion of righteousness, and I just think that that kind of stuff is just, man, it's just so Pharisees, Sadducees, just not the spirit of the law. So that's a long way of saying, is it true that it's kind of it's not really how do I say this? It's annoying because framing it in a way to suggest that the church is somehow banning Nine Inch Nails isn't true, but, that's not true. That's not a doctrine in the church. But that being said, there's a cultural element here that that somehow when someone says something like that, we go, "Oh," we act as though maybe a bishop who was overreaching might not have said something to her, made her feel that way, you know? So for that, I empathize with her, and I don't, I'm glad that she's enjoying the music that she enjoyed before. So, okay. These are all really great questions, by the way. All right, what's your favorite non-religious book? I'm gonna go with fiction books. So, I really got into John Grisham, shocker, I'm an attorney, when I was younger, and, read a lot of his books, loved his movies, started watching his movies first and then started reading the books. And I think my favorite book is actually The Chamber, about 800 pages long, a little bit more, and they later did a movie with, I think it was it was Gene Hackman and I think Chris O'Donnell, I'm not sure on that. But the concept is there's a death row inmate who was a member of the Ku Klux Klan who blew up a Jewish synagogue and was on, like I said, he's on death row. And his grandson, who never knew him, who became an attorney, came and tried to do the appeals to save his life. And he came because his father had committed suicide, changed their names, and never allowed him to be around him. And he just wanted to learn who he was. And the whole book is about them building a relationship together. And it was a great book. I really enjoyed it. Another one that I liked was A Time to Kill. They made a great movie about it, although the book is better, with Matthew McConaughey and Samuel L. Jackson. So those are probably my favorite nonfiction, or I mean, rather fiction books. What's your favorite dessert? Oh, without a doubt, Reese's eggs. But if it's homemade, I'm gonna go with chocolate chip cookies, especially my mom's. My mom makes some killer chocolate chip cookies every time she makes them. I take the whole tray and I eat them until I pass out. And so, um, yeah. Do you have any music guilty pleasures? Yes, I do. I am a big fan of Taylor Swift. I'm quite the Swiftie. Very much enjoy her, and I just love a good boy band. I mean, in the '90s, I was a big Backstreet Boys guy, NSYNC guy, not so much 98 Degrees. Um, I liked New Kids on the Block when all my friends didn't. Like, all the girls loved them and me, and that was it. I love boy bands. So, yeah, that's my guilty pleasure. Okay, what's the best concert you've ever been to in your life? Oh, I can't even begin to think. There've been so many awesome shows. AC/DC was pretty cool, recently. I've seen Metallica 17 times. Those have all been really good. Metallica's awesome. I think the first time I saw them was pretty magical. Um, I'd say a sleeper that was really good. My second concert ever was I went with my best friend to see Alanis Morissette on the Jagged Little Pill tour, and she blew me away. She was so good. That album still holds up as one of the best albums of all time. It really is. No wonder she didn't really do anything big after that. How do you match a album where literally every song was a number one hit? So, yeah, those are a few of the ones that kinda come to mind now. Okay, who is your favorite wrestler and why? Okay, so Hulk Hogan. So let me explain. So in 1980, I think it was 87. 87? Had to have been 87. Yeah, 87. So in 1987, my I was 6 years old. My dad and I weren't on the best of terms. Things were a little awkward between us and, not a lot of hope in my life at that moment. Of course, at 7, I really didn't know how to articulate that, but I know that that's how I felt. And my son or my dad and my aunt took me to the Arco Arena to watch WrestleMania 3 on closed circuit television, which was the precursor to pay-per-view. So before pay-per-view, before streaming, we went to the arena and just watched on big screens. And the show was at the Pontiac Silverdome, and there were 93,000 people in the Pontiac Silverdome, and there was, I don't know, thousands of people at Arco Arena watching. And Hulk Hogan was gonna wrestle Andre the Giant, and I was already a Hulk Hogan fan, but man, I just did not believe that he could beat Andre the Giant. I mean, he was Andre the Giant. He never lost. He beat up everybody. And I thought for sure there was no way he was gonna be able to slam him or do anything, and at the very beginning of the match, he tried to pick him up and he couldn't slam him, and I'm like, "Oh, man, this is a lost cause. Andre's just too big." And then at the end of the match, Hogan slammed him, and the crowd went wild. And I just felt like this electricity go through me. And I remember for the first time in my life that I could remember, I actually believed in something. Like, I actually believed that, as weird as it sounds, at 7 years old, 6 or 7 years old, I believed that, that you can actually conquer something big. And so, say what you want about Hulk Hogan. I know the end of his life, he really struggled, but I can tell you what, he was the first he was my first hero, and he was the first one to make me believe. So, okay. Um, did you say you are doing acting? If so, what have you done? Yeah, I'm not doing any acting. Um, I have in the past. So when I was, uh, 18 and I was wrestling, excuse me, we were doing some backyard wrestling, and we gotten a lot of notoriety doing that. And we were on all the TV stations, and we were on all the newspapers and the radio stations, and we were drawing pretty big in my backyard, a couple hundred people a show. And, anyway, a guy named Bob Boris, who was a director from Hollywood, gave me a call and said, "Hey, I have a dream of doing um, a movie on backyard wrestling, and I would like to come and shoot some footage of you guys, wrestling." So I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So he came out to a show and he filmed us wrestling and paid me pretty handsomely for it and offered to have me come out to read for one of the parts. Problem was is the shooting was gonna be at a time when I would have to delay my mission to be in the movie, so I was like, "Nah, that doesn't seem like a good idea." So I left and I went on the mission. The movie sucked. The movie was terrible, but it did get made, and, um, yeah, I mean, right out the gate, first thing you see is my little brother, and us. We're all wrestling during the credits, during the opening credits. It was pretty cool. So okay, who is your favorite modern day prophet? I think Russell M. Nelson was pretty great. Um, I loved changes he made to church, the way we do things. I also love all the temple announcements and the acceleration of the temple work. As far as speakers go, I'm gonna add apostles in and say my favorite apostles to hear speak were Jeffrey R. Holland and Bruce R. McConkie. I love, if I'm looking at, um, talks I really enjoy, Bruce R. McConkie's The Purifying Power of Gethsemane, which was his last talk at his last general conference, and, The Caravan Moves On are both excellent talks. Jeffrey R. Holland gave a talk to mission presidents at the MTC, called Missionary Work in the Atonement. I think you can find it in an old Ensign. He never gave it in general conference, but that's another amazing talk that he gave as well. So, okay, have you ever traveled internationally? If so, where? Favorite place? So, I love Paris. Took my son every one of my kids, I told them that when they graduate high school, they get 1 week wherever they wanna go with me. He wanted to go to London to try out, and he made it to an international honor choir. So we went out to London, and then once he was done singing, we went out to Paris for a few days and checked out the Olympics. And man, the food in Paris is just so amazing and all the sights. It just you see them in books, and it's not the same as seeing them in person. If I was going to recommend anything, I would recommend that you do not skimp on accommodations. I did that. I was like, "Ah, let's save some money and just go to a 3-star hotel instead of a 4." Um, but it's not the same as here in the States. A 4-star hotel is basically a regular hotel here in the States. So, I would definitely recommend that you spring for a little bit more because it was not comfortable, when I was in the 3-star places. So, okay. So now I want to get to flat earthers, man. Flat earthers. I did a podcast with Flat Earth Dave. I had him come on and explain how he can be a flat earther when Artemis was going on, and he tried to explain it to me. And wouldn't you know it, he didn't convince me. And so yeah, so I had interestingly a lot of comments on that. A lot of people who um, who messaged me on both sides of the issue. Um, and so rather than go over every single one of them, I just chose like a representative question that seemed to be kind of the overarching theme for all of them. So for the what the flat earthers call, and I'm using those air quotes again, people, globers, the question was, why are you letting out flat earthers on and why are you giving them a platform? And here's my answer to that. I am genuinely interested in the human condition. I want to know how people tick. So, um, I was genuinely when I first invited Flat Earth Dave on here a little over a year ago, it was to just ask him why. Why are you a flat earther? What are you seeing? Convince me. What makes you think that flat earth is real? And he showed me. And I go, okay. So there just seemed to be a general theme of distrust of authority and maybe even a little bit of what I would call insecurity in a lack of education. And what I mean by that is there seems to be an element, just observing, there seems to be an element to flat earthers that, oh, well, yeah, you've got this formal education and you went to college and I didn't, but you were tricked, you were propagandized. I am the one who's really thinking straight. And, not to say that you have to go to college to be intelligent, but I just think that there's a level of insecurity that sometimes people have when they didn't do that. And so maybe I'm wrong, willing to listen to that, but that's just kind of what I've seen. Now, so I give everybody the opportunity to come on the podcast because I genuinely want to hear why they believe the way that they believe, understand how they tick, and then maybe see the commonalities that they may have with other people. And so now the second time Flat Earth Dave came on, it was just more of, you know, okay, what's your response to this? And I really enjoyed it. I like Dave. I think he's a good guy. He's passionate about what he's doing. He's funny. He's charismatic. He's a fun hang. Um, I'm I'm not a flat earther. He hasn't convinced me, and I think that makes him angry. But genuinely enjoyed the conversation. So now here is an email from a flat earther, and this one I'm gonna probably have a little bit of stronger response to. So, Josh, it's honestly embarrassing that someone who calls himself a lawyer can be this intellectually lazy. Your entire career is supposed to revolve around evidence, logic, and tearing apart weak arguments. Yet when it comes to the biggest lie out there, you just sit there and nod like everyone else. No backbone, no curiosity, just blind acceptance. Tell me, have you ever personally verified the Earth is a spinning ball? Or are you just parroting what you were told in school and what agencies feed you? Because from the outside, it looks like you've completely shut your brain off on this one, since there is no evidence that the Earth is a globe. You bring people onto your podcast to challenge narratives, but when it comes to this topic, you won't even entertain it. That's not being open minded, that's being willfully ignorant. Water doesn't curve, the horizon doesn't drop. These are things you can observe yourself, yet somehow you ignore them. For someone trained to evaluate evidence that's either incompetence or cowardice, you pick. Frankly, it makes you look like an idiot. The guy who talks a big game about questioning things but folds the second it's uncomfortable. Maybe instead of hiding behind credentials, you should actually start thinking for yourself because right now you're not impressing anyone. Someone who actually questions what they're told. Okay, so let's start with the there's no evidence thing because this is something that I really get annoyed with everyone. There is evidence. Let's talk about what evidence is. Evidence is sometimes documentation, sometimes it's scientific evidence, sometimes it's measurements, sometimes it's testimonial, sometimes it's direct evidence, sometimes it's circumstantial evidence, sometimes it's expert testimonial evidence. There's all sorts of different kinds of evidence. So when you say there's no evidence, no, you're just saying there's no evidence that you like or that you believe. When juries go in and they see here two sides of an argument, they are told that they're supposed to weigh the evidence and to give a certain weight to evidence that they see based on their own understanding and their own interpretation of what you're saying. And so to say there's no evidence is complete poppycock. Okay, there's how about the fact that every astronaut who's ever allegedly gone to space has said it's a globe? Every picture we've seen allegedly from space is from a globe. Shows a globe. Every calculation that mainstream scientific community seems to point to curvature. How about the fact that engineers, my best friend is an engineer who works on ballistic missiles, and when he works on them, one of the things that the military has to take into account when they are going to drop a missile on a specific place in the world, they also have to calculate the curvature of the Earth. Are you telling us that the military has been taking those calculations into account wrongly? Those are all examples of evidence that the Earth is a globe. Now, you may question that evidence. You may not believe that evidence. You may be thinking that I'm looking at that evidence and that you know better than me and everybody else who's ever looked at it and just believe that everyone's been lying in the entire world. But that doesn't mean there's no evidence. Now, as far as this whole idea of, oh, we all you maybe don't hide behind credentials. I'm sorry, dude, but like I know who you are and I'm not gonna like out you here. But man, you're a gas station attendant. Like, no offense to gas station attendants. I know there's some pretty smart ones out there, but this guy ain't one of them. Okay. So, with all due respect, like, you know, I guess I'm just not going to take a lot of stock in what you have to say when you're checking out Gardettos and Slim Jims about my intellect. So I guess in closing, I'll just say you're right. I don't believe it. I don't believe that the global elite of rich, white, nameless, faceless one percenters have convinced all the countries of the world to lie to us for centuries about the earth being round and even fake space exploration so they could hide God and or fallen angels behind an Antarctica ice belt. I guess that makes me the idiot in this situation. Sometimes people never cease to amaze me. Anyway, again, no disrespect to gaslit attendants, and no disrespect to anybody who's actually looking at this stuff and critically thinking about it and trying to figure it out. But saying that I am somehow stupid because I'm believing what I've been taught my entire life, just because some guy in a funny hat came in onto my podcast and showed me a few pictures that he claimed was I don't think that makes me stupid. Anyway, okay. And it was a funny hat. Okay. So now let's go back to some softer things, shall we? Got a couple more questions. These are some deep ones, so I want to address them. So this comes from a parent. Hi, Josh. I've been listening to your podcast for a while now, and I really appreciate the way you talk about real life challenges with honesty and perspective. I'm hoping you might be able to offer some advice on something I've been struggling with as a parent. Lately, I've been having a hard time with my kids not doing what I ask. Simple things like cleaning up, getting ready on time, or following through on responsibilities. What's been especially frustrating is that when I finally get upset or raise my voice after asking multiple times, they turn it back on me and get mad that I am angry. It feels like I'm stuck in this cycle where I'm trying to stay calm and patient, but nothing changes. And then when I react, I'm somehow the bad guy. I don't want to be constantly frustrated or feel like I'm losing control, but I also don't want to raise kids who think they can ignore direction without consequences. How do you strike that balance between being patient and being firm? And how do you handle it when kids seem more upset about your reaction than their own behavior? Would appreciate any insight you have. It genuinely helps. I got to tell you, as a first time I read that, I'm like, have you been in my house? It's like, if if you've got the answer to this question, uh, by all means, send it my way because I am dealing with the same stuff. Um, and I think that there's a lot of parents out there that are dealing with this same issue. So don't be too frustrated. You're you're just they're just teenagers and they're psychotic. Um, but let me offer a couple of things that I've tried that, each one of my kids is different, and these have worked in varying degrees. Um, by the way, I am not an expert in this at all. I just have kids and I'm just trying things. So one of the things I've tried to do is when I have this situation where say maybe I'm trying to get somebody to do something, or maybe they're not getting out of bed because we have to go somewhere like school or we need to go to church or something like that, or I'm trying to get them to move, but they're not moving fast enough, or they're saying, "Hey, wait till my game is over," or whatever. So when I lose it and they give me that whole, "Oh, why are you getting so angry at me?" Okay, fine. Um, when things calm down, I sit them down and I say, "Okay, so obviously you don't like that I'm yelling at you, and I don't like to be yelling at you. So obviously we need to resolve this. So how about you tell me how you need me to show up so that we can resolve this issue?" Now, sometimes when I've done this with certain kids, they've actually made some suggestions. And when they do, and you have to talk with them about it and try to come up with something and see if you can adjust to what they need. Because then if you adjust to what they need, but the behavior doesn't change, well, you can talk about that. And then sometimes I've heard them just say, "Well, I don't know." And then I go, "Well, okay, if you don't know, neither do I. So how are we going to fix it? So I'd like you to go and think about it. But until you do, I don't really know any other way to show up. But if you're not going to do what I ask you to do on the first or second or third or fourth or fifth or 25th try, or you're not going to get out of bed on the first, third, 50th try, then this is going to continue." And so that's one thing. The other thing I've done recently is if I come over and I ask them, "Hey, I wanna do this," and they're like, "Oh, wait till my game's over," or whatever, and then I come, "Oh, yeah, I'll do it later." I come over about the 3rd or 4th time and I go, "Okay, so how many times, do I have to come over here before I am allowed to yell at you?" And they usually look at me and they go, and I go, "Well, I've been over here 3 or 4 times. I've been talking pretty nicely. I'm trying to get you to go, to get with this thing. Nothing's happening. Now I'm gonna yell at you, and when I yell at you, you're gonna start moving, and you're gonna look at me like I'm a jerk, but at least you're gonna start moving. So what you're telling me by not moving until I yell is that the only way I can get you to move is if I yell. So why don't you do me a favor before I have to yell and just go out there and try to do what I'm asking you to do?" And that one has proven to be a little more effective. Not always, but sometimes. So there's a couple little things I've tried. You could use them if you want. Let me know how it goes for you. It doesn't work here all the time. It doesn't work on every kid. They're all different. Just a couple of suggestions, maybe it'll help. Okay. Okay. Folks, we've come to the last question. um, Very sensitive subject. And so I appreciate the person being so vulnerable with me and let me address this. Says, "Hi, Josh. I've been listening to the podcast for a while now. Appreciate how honest and real your conversations are. I'm reaching out because I'm in a place I don't quite know how to navigate. I recently went through a divorce, and it wasn't just any relationship, it was the love of my life. Losing it has felt unbearable. Some days it feels like I'm just moving from one tragic loss to the next, and I can't seem to find solid ground again. I keep asking myself whether I'm even capable of doing it again, of opening up, trusting, and loving someone the way I did before. Right now, it just feels impossible. There's a part of me that wants to move forward, but another part that feels stuck, skeptical, and honestly, a little bitter. How do you move on from something like that? How do you stop yourself from becoming cynical? And maybe the hardest question, how do you pull yourself out of that heavy, lingering depression that follows a loss like this? I'm trying to make sense of it all, but I feel lost. I thought you might have some perspective that could help, and maybe other people who aren't saying it out loud. Thanks for taking the time to read this if you do. Okay, so I hear you. I hear you, my friend. When I first read this, I could feel the hurt that you're feeling, the love that you had. And you don't just walk away from something like that unscathed. You don't. You carry it. You carry the weight of what it was. You carry the anger and the sadness for what could have been. And, regardless of who is at fault or whether you did something or she did something or whatever, um, it feels like the end of the story. It feels like you were in the middle of a dance and the song just stopped in the middle. Um, but here's the hard truth no one likes to say out loud. Every love story ends in heartbreak. Every single one way or the other. They all end early except the last one. And the last one ends in death, at least for a time. So sometimes it ends in goodbye, sometimes it ends in silence, sometimes it ends in passing away, and sometimes it just ends even when we hoped it wouldn't. I think deep down, we all know that this life, love, it's a sad song, and it always has been. But we still sing it anyway. We fall in love anyway. We open ourselves up anyway. We become vulnerable anyway. We risk everything anyway. Because there's something deeper than just how it ends. There's something stronger than just the fear of loss. It's the hope. It's the hope inside the quiet voice that says, maybe this time it will turn out. Maybe this time it lasts. Maybe this time it heals. Maybe this time it becomes something greater than before. And so, even if it doesn't, even if the song ends the same way, choosing to sing it again, choosing to believe again, choosing to love again, choosing to see the world as it could be instead of how it is. That's courage. That's strength. That's faith. It's not blind faith that nothing's going to hurt you, but it's faith that love is still worth it, even if it doesn't turn out. So you're not feeling great right now, but don't close your heart. Don't let this end be the thing that defines the next beginning or all the beginnings. You're not done. The story didn't end, just the chapter did. So when the music starts again, and it will, sing. And this is where the podcast ends. So stay faithful, friends. Keep moving forward. Somehow, some way, it will work out. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time.